Welcome to the A New Insight podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hello and welcome, everyone. Today we have workplace culture innovator, leadership strategist, and founder of Executive Moms, Alexa Starks, with us today. Alexa, I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited, and honestly, it's always funny hearing your own bio read out loud.
Oh,
Kind of,
get
I feel like
ready.
it almost makes me blush a little bit.
Oh, get ready for more. I have the whole bio to read right
Okay,
now, and I'm going to read that
okay.
off. I'm going to watch you blush, and then we're going to get right into our questions. Alexis Starks is a workplace culture innovator, leadership strategist, and founder of Executive Moms, a platform dedicated to redesigning work environments so parents can thrive without sacrificing career growth. After more than a decade in corporate operations and navigating her own return to work following maternity leave, Alexa recognized how outdated systems quietly push working parents, especially mothers, out of leadership pathways. I couldn't agree more. She now partners with organizations to help build parent forward cultures through reentry planning, leadership development, and systemic change. Her work focuses on retention, equity, and helping companies move beyond surface level policies towards truly supportive, sustainable workplace structures. Alexa, I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Thank you. That's such an amazing bio. I don't remember if I wrote that or if you wrote that or if you pulled that, but I'm gonna have to soundbite that and put that on my website somewhere.
Good, good, and I loved all the blushing, and I
Yeah.
have to say that, I'm excited to have you on because I'm always on an empowerment kick and seeing, inequities between m men and
Mhm.
women still in the workplace everywhere you can imagine, and so it's really important for me, to have voices on this podcast that are women forward, pro women, ready to,
Yep.
like, help, but I also do love that you're parent forward. It's not
Mhm.
just about women reentering the workplace. It is a difficult place for men once they
Mhm.
become parents as well. I want you to talk a little bit about your inspiration to do this work. You have 2 toddlers, is that
Yes,
correct?
I have 2
And give us
toddlers.
your perspective on what you were doing before children and what difficulties did you face once you had your children?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent a little bit more than a decade in corporate America in advertising and operations, and I loved my job and loved my career and worked my way up the ladder and was very excited about it. And then I had my 2 kids back to back, and there was no plan for maternity leave. It was just like, and plus I went into labor early at 39 weeks, and so there was no handoff, there was no smooth transition, but then when I came back to work, there was this assumption that I was back at 100% on the first day back, right? It was just read your 10,000 emails and pick back up all your work. You're good to go. And there was no conversation about it. It was just this assumption, and me being so newly postpartum, I had no ability to speak up for myself either and
Mm.
say, "Hey, I can't take back 100% work on the first day." And similar story with my second maternity leave, different boss, but similar story of no support, no conversations, and I also just didn't know what was okay to say, how I could advocate for myself and say, "Hey, I need to pick up my kids from daycare at 4 o'clock or 4:30, or no, you can't ping me at 5:30. Can I hop on a call because I'm in the middle of dinner time or bath time? Or I'm burning out trying to take on too much work and manage all of this." So long story short, it was very unsustainable, and I started talking to a lot of other working moms and realized this is very common. The lack of support with coming back to work after maternity leave. and especially for very ambitious, career-driven women who want to work and who want to make it work and stay in a career, but realize there's no support and they can't. And when women are forced to choose career or kids, they're always gonna choose kids. You do. And so I quickly realized this is very systemic. This is a lot of places that just don't have simple manager support. Managers don't know how to support, they don't know what to say, so they don't say anything at all, and there's no flexibility built in, and so I wanted to do something better. I wanted to fix it, and, I had a little ambition shift after having my kids, and I wanted to do work that was really meaningful and made a big impact in the world and for my kids and their future, and so I started my business, Executive Moms, and figured that this is my way to do what I would have wanted, to create a product, a service that not only benefits other women and other parents and companies, but is what I would have wanted. So,
Yes,
and it's been so phenomenal and validating, honestly.
I do love that. Did you find, and I'm curious, in your personal experience and the experience of the people that you've been coaching,
Mhm,
does gender matter in terms of bosses? Do people find that female bosses are a little bit more open and understanding, is there the same systemic problem
mhm.
despite gender?
It's tough because for me, I had my first boss was a guy, but he was a parent. My second boss was a woman, but she was not a parent. And both were kind of equally non-conversational about it, didn't wanna talk about it, no support. But I would say that people who are parents, men and women, generally get it a little bit better and can provide that support or flexibility where needed. It's definitely harder for people to understand if you're just not a parent at all. And there is a difference between the men and women because the men don't always understand the postpartum realities, especially in America. You'll get maybe 12 weeks, if you're lucky, of maternity leave, and you're still so newly postpartum. And so many women have postpartum mental health issues, and now you're trying to work a full-time job and deal with that. Your hormones are all over the place. And so there's a lot going on, and then a lot of men don't know that. They're not aware of
Give a
that.
better picture. I help women all the time after they've given birth and, have seen them through some really debilitating postpartum depression. But,
Mhm.
for the men listening who are, in these leadership positions, give them a really accurate description of what it's like for a woman after they've given birth.
I mean, it's gonna be different when you're 6 weeks postpartum versus 3 months postpartum, but you're still often very sleep deprived. Your baby's probably not sleeping through the night yet, or maybe, you're waking up to breastfeed every 3 hours, 2, 3 hours, and so you're up a lot of the night, you're sleep deprived. Your hormones are still way out of whack when you're 3 months postpartum even. And now you have to maybe start pumping. And that's a whole other challenge to now figure out how to pump in public and store it and maintain it, which is a lot of work. And so there's that. There's a mental health issue going on. In the Future of Working Motherhood report that we published a couple weeks ago, we reported that 50% of women experienced postpartum depression or anxiety. That's a lot. And that's
Mhm,
a lot to hold, and most women don't seek treatment for it either. And
mm,
so you have a lot of that going on and leaving your baby for the first time as well, hormones out of whack. So there's just so much going on.
wow.
And, systemically and for support, we're not asking for massive accommodations or massive policy change. It's generally flexibility to take the time you need and the ability to slowly transition back into work. And so there's I know I'm sure we'll get into all of these things, but that postpartum time is so rough. And a lot of it too is men don't often get the same paternity leave. And so they very often don't get to see firsthand a lot of what the moms are going through all day and all night.
Mhm.
And, that's part of when we see a lot of countries, especially in Europe, have better paternity leave and companies that can provide that, it actually supports the mom so much.
Oh, absolutely. I okay, so as a systemic issue,
Mhm.
how did that give us a picture of just kind of history
Mhm.
for women, because women really didn't fully enter the workplace until 60s, 70s really was when more and more women started to pursue full-time careers. What has been the journey in terms of leave for parents since that time that you know of?
Well, there was not a lot of women who stayed in the workforce after having a baby. So, 50, 60, 70 years ago, we saw women entering having a career, maybe it was more secretary, assistant, kind of
Mhm.
desk sideline jobs like that, and they would work until they had a baby and generally not come back. And so maternity leave honestly hasn't even really been a thing until maybe more of the 90s. I think that it's started to become more common to have 6 weeks or 12 weeks of maternity leave, let alone paid is a whole separate story.
Wow.
Um, but so it was very much women were just that was like a career ending thing that happened. You had kids, you're gonna quit, you're gonna stay at home with the kids. And then you start having women say, "No, I'm gonna actually go back to work," and a lot of it became, "Okay, well, what's the support?" Maybe you have parents nearby that can help watch the kid, because daycare still wasn't as common, and then it started becoming a little bit more common, and that opened up the door to a lot more women going back to work after having kids and navigating, "Okay, well, I have to go back at 6 weeks," if they had that, but then they put their baby in daycare full time. So it's the the introduction of daycare has opened up a lot of pathways for women to continue their careers and grow and not have the actual choice to make of career or children.
Mm. And would you say that from what you can tell, it's getting better for women, or it has remained about the same since daycare has come about?
I think it's gotten better, but it is state to state and company to company, right? Because in the US, it's not standard, and you are very dependent on where you work and what state you live in, right? We just saw the news last week or the week before New York passed a new universal child care law for ages 2 and up, I think, or 3 and up for preschool and pre-K, which is huge. That's phenomenal, groundbreaking achievement to have, universal pre-K, and I think maybe Nevada might have also done something similar a couple months ago with a universal, pre-K or childcare, and so it's definitely better than it was, but we're still far off from it, and you're still heavily dependent on what company you work at and at their good graces, to be honest. And even in California, where you would think, "Oh, they're liberal, oh, they would be supportive," I know plenty of companies that offer the bare minimum of 6 weeks of whatever the state disability paid leave is, and
Mm.
so you have to it's I personally think it should always be part of your interviewing process if you are a woman to know about. You may not have kids when you're there in your tenure, but it is important to know.
Yes, well, certainly something I think to chew on, especially I think in today's climate. It's
Mhm.
disheartening. I'm in California, so it's disheartening to know, and I've seen parents have difficulty with, parental leave and
Mhm.
trying to get extra leave if they need it, especially for mental health reasons,
Yep.
and it being a very, very difficult process,
Yeah.
with a lot of denials. So, we have a huge gap between policy and real world support. What do you think is the biggest difficulty when you see, um, you know, policy over here, but what's happening in the real world?
I think it's I always think it's twofold because both you need a company to have policy that says it's okay to ask for flexibility and you're not gonna get penalized, right? But more than that, you need the managers and the leadership to to set that tone. And so I think
Mhm,
it's dual-sided. You need dual accountability where the managers can can set that and say, "Here's what we can do for you to support you." But you
mhm,
also need the parents to be able to ask for what support they need, to be able to say, "Hey, I had a traumatic birth experience," or "I have, terrible postpartum depression and need to go to therapy once a week or twice a week," or whatever it is, and be able to speak up for themselves and ask for that. And one of the really disheartening, statistics from the report that we just published was that only about 30%, a third of mothers even feel comfortable and safe speaking up to their manager and HR about their family needs like that. That's low. That's a low
yes.
percentage.
Yes. I've talked about this before in the podcast and really looked into this. Women don't even negotiate their salaries
Mm-mm.
half the time when they come into the workplace. And that starts early in our
Yeah.
conditioning. We're conditioned to not speak up, to not advocate for our needs, to play
Mhm.
nice, to be agreeable, to be quiet. And it has really hurt us in the workplace. And I think that managers, bosses tend to prey on that,
Yeah.
not giving the same kind of salary increases between men and
Mhm.
women. And so it's really important for women to speak up. So, how do you help them find their voice?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I do with my coaching is practice. The more you just honestly practice having that conversation with your manager, the more confident you will feel doing it in real time. Most of the women don't actually practice, and so they go into that conversation unprepared and never having said the words out loud, and confidence is always gonna come from practicing it. The second thing I always talk about is making it, like a kind of like a sales pitch, but expressing why what you're asking for benefits them, benefits the company, right? So you're positioning it as, "I'm not asking for accommodations." You say, "I'm asking for flexibility to work remotely for, 2 days a week or, hybrid so that I can do my job better, which impacts the team in XYZ and performance ABC," right? And so it's less about you asking for something unusual and more about the team being their best and doing their best. And so it's it's that and practice and understanding that at the end of the day, what you're asking for is not crazy. It's not ridiculous. You're probably asking for the bare minimum, to be honest. And it has to come down to what's going to be most beneficial for you and your family and your baby. And that has to be your driving factor for why you're going to push yourself to do it, even if it's
Yes.
uncomfortable.
Yes. So, we don't get a lot of self esteem, self worth
Mhm.
training, but there is training out there, and you can learn how to advocate for your needs. And truly, I think a lot of people they just even stop at how will this benefit me? They don't even
Yeah.
necessarily think about how they're benefiting the company. What are they bringing to the company that no one else can? Why were you hired in the first place? And knowing your worth can
Mhm.
make the biggest difference in not just your salary, but how you would navigate having a child while working. So I think
Yeah.
that's so important. I love the idea of just practicing and what you're providing in your coaching. So you talk about parent forward workplaces.
Mhm.
What does that look like in practice beyond more flexible hours or possibilities for remote work?
Yeah. So I wanna highlight those 2 things that they are incredibly important for parent forward cultures. And honestly, for anyone who has any sort of caregiving responsibility or chronic illness or mental health issues or disability of some kind that remote options or hybrid options at least, and flexibility are incredibly important. The other thing is some sort of asynchronous tool is always a recommendation of mine when I talk to companies. I mean, like using Asana or ClickUp or Monday.com or Trello or Google Sheets, even something where when you do get the opportunity to work remotely from home or hybrid or part time or whatever, you can still track all of your progress and show your productivity so that let's say you get up early at 6 a.m. to do a couple hours of work before you get the kids up. And then maybe you take off work at, 3 because of school and you pick back up your work after you put the kids down and work from, I don't know, 7 to 10 or something. This is what I used to do.
Ah,
And I mean, and
really
but I
long day, Alexa.
it's a very long day, but I could always show that I still got all of my work done. Here's the progress on XYZ projects and tasks ABC were all completed, and so nothing ever was delayed. And so you can demonstrate, "Hey, I'm a working parent, but I get all of my work done and still do my full job to my full capabilities." And so that's one of the biggest things for a parent forward culture is some sort of asynchronous tool. And then the second most important thing I would say is also that psychological safety. That's a huge thing. And that's something that isn't really taught. There's no like manager training. There's no like, how do you create a psychologically safe environment? And it's how do you feel safe speaking up to your manager without penalty, right? And that's hard because someone has to be the first person to do it. And this comes down to the manager and how they create that psychologically safe space, that environment with their team to say, if you are struggling, please tell me and I will help you.
Mm,
And there's not going to be a penalty. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to bias you. I'm not going to sideline your career or promotion track, but I'm here to help you. And good managers do that. Good managers know that their job is to make sure their team can do their best work and they are there to help them grow. That's a good manager. And there's not that many of them, unfortunately, but that is something so important, and that should be part of manager training or leadership development programs that every manager who has, direct reports has to go through, in my opinion, but that's something so important that I teach in the workshops is creating a psychologically safe space and recognizing if you see someone on your team struggling, to have just like a one-on-one check-in, have a 15-minute check-in, and like, "What can I do to support you? Is it workload? Is it bandwidth? Are you burning out? What do you need from me?" And having that open conversation, and sometimes starting with that vulnerability and openness from you as a manager lets them know it's safe for them to speak up. So
ugh,
that's
that's a whole 'nother podcast, Alexa, and
I
do
know.
you do you train managers as well in things like this? Because really, I can't even tell you how many horrible, toxic workplace stories I have heard in
Mhm.
my therapy practice. The
Yeah.
things that people still do, and I do think that right now it's a particularly toxic culture, from
Mhm.
the top down politically what's
Mhm.
happening, especially towards women.
Mhm.
Do you train the bosses and the managers? Because we need more psychological safety in the workplace, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of my business is coaching them expecting a new moms, and the other half of my business is B2B workshops. So I'll go into a company and do workshops to train managers on HR on how to better support moms in that maternity leave and return to work transition and create that parent forward culture. And we'll go through example scenarios that a new mom or parent might experience and how you can support them, what language is supportive versus what's not supportive, and really the why behind all of it. Um, and a lot of managers are like, they don't know what they don't know. And like I said, sometimes they just don't know what to say. So they say nothing, which is worse because that's suggesting that my discomfort is more important than you struggling or helping you. And so, yeah, it is very important, and I honestly am such an advocate for, like, a leadership development program for every single person who has a direct report. You should have some sort of empathy, bias, emotional intelligence training, bare minimum.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the second half of this podcast because it's a whole other can of worms.
Yes.
Um, but before we end this half, Give me a picture of, we talk in executive moms, you talk about structured reentry. What is that? What is an intentional reentry, and why is that so critical for employees and organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the bread and butter of what I do, and it's gonna look different for every mom because everyone has different maternity leave times, different experiences, but the bottom line is it's how to ramp back up sustainably. So when you hire a new person for the first time, you don't expect them to be at 100% on the first day. They don't even know how to do their job. And you generally have a 90-day ramp up plan where you onboard them and they meet with new people and new teams and do all these things, and that's essentially the same thing. Is maybe in the first week you are navigating, the pumping logistics and getting rereading all of your emails, starting to get updates again. Maybe you're like, okay, by the second week, I want to be at 50% taking back my workload. And then by the first month or month and a half, I'm at 100%. And it's going to look different for everybody. Some women want to jump right back in, and some women need that transition plan. And also, you can go back part time, you could go back hybrid for the first month, you could go back remote for the first couple weeks or 2 months or 3 months. It's all negotiable, and it's all conversations that you should start having before you go on maternity leave, not after, so that you can
Mm.
start actually figuring out what's gonna be most sustainable for me. So, it's just sustainable return to work transitioning.
Ugh, so important. And I think we've highlighted a lot in the first half of this interview. And I really want to home in on a couple points that I really want mothers to take away, that we really have to work on our confidence, our
Mhm,
self-esteem, and our conditions of worth. That is of utmost importance before you take on any other venture, whether
mhm.
it's in your career, whether it's going on maternity leave and coming back. You need to know how much you're valued, how much you're worth, and to focus on your self-confidence, because if you have those things in place, you can really negotiate anything.
Yep.
And you can get help from people like Alexa. There's other coaches, there's therapists out there
Mhm.
who can really help you shore up your self-confidence so you can go out there and use your voice and negotiate. And we really need this now more than ever. So I'm so glad there's people like Alexa. And we're going to come back for the second half and we're going to dive into some toxic workplace cultures and what managers and bosses can do differently, because oh my gosh, it's pretty bad out there, you guys. We
Yeah.
want it better.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us. Tune in next time for the second half of this amazing interview with workplace culture innovator and founder of Executive Moms, Alexa Starks. Thanks for tuning into the A New Insight podcast. Please remember the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anu.insight and at anu-insight.com under the A New Insight podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anu.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.